Hello, dear colleagues and Mr. Ts. My name is Shunga Salimbay, and I'm senior at the Department of City and Regional Planning at ME2. I live in a world where computers can outperform humans at chess, CSGO, and even Dota. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are creating new breakthroughs all the time, leaving us wondering whether we will soon be living in a technological utopia or battling for survival against the cyber Arnold and Skynet. Today, I'm going to talk about two main differences between human brains and computers. Here's my overview. I will start with basic explanation of human brains and computers as data processing entities, followed up with structural similarities of human brains and computers, and two differences of human brains and computers, mainly and namely differences in information storage and its processing, and talk about the human brain as a self-organizing system and its trauma-induced plasticity ability. The human brain is a complex biological computing device that even the world's fastest computers fail to emulate. You might have heard the brain being compared to a computer, but how accurate is this? At first glance, they appear to have many similarities. The graphics card could be seen to be familiar and to be similar to the visual cortex, where visual information is processed by the brain in occipital lobe. Similarly, the sound card might be seen as the auditory cortex, where they process auditory information in the brain. The hard drive where memory is stored might be the hippocampus. This is the key memory area. It's in temporal lobe. The processor or CPU could be the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with thinking, planning, and problem solving. We might also put RAM into the performance of prefrontal cortex, as it could be seen as similar to our short-term or working memory. We might see sensory cortex as a mouse, keyboard, or touchscreen, which collect input information from the outside world. And finally, the motor cortex, which coordinate our movements and might possibly be seen as similar to a monitor or speakers, the way in which a computer outputs to the world. So how accurate is this comparison? If human brains and computers really do work the same, then we might expect similar abilities. But this really is not the case. It turns out that brains and computers are actually quite different in terms of how they function, with memory being a good example of this. Computers work by collecting and storing information in units, much like you would store books on a bookshelf. When they want to access data, they search through millions of files to find it. They either have the information or they don't. Brains, on the other hand, store memories in a very different way. Estimates vary on how many nerve cells or neurons exist in a typical human brain. Many studies rely on 100 billion neurons, while a Stanford University study estimates that the brain actually has 200 billion neurons. Herculano Hausel, now an associate professor of psychological science at Vanderbilt University, devised a new way to count the brain cells. She came up with a different number, 86 billion. Rather than each memory being held in a single storage container, in our brains, they are represented by a network of neural activations across the brain. A pineapple, for example, might activate association with the colors like yellow, or a fruit in general, a certain smell and a taste sensation, or even a movie associated with, like Pineapple Express. The more times the memory is activated, the stronger the specific pattern of activation becomes, and the stronger the memory. With billions of neurons and endless combinations of activation possible, the storage possibilities are almost infinite. We also know that the thinking of the brain in terms of specific regions like computer components is not very accurate. In reality, the brain is one complex organ and functions are not neatly divided into regions. The hippocampus, for example, is not the only part of the brain responsible for memory, and most other regions do several different jobs. It's really difficult to compare brains and computers because they work in completely different ways. The human brain is a self-organizing system. Scientists now know that the brain has an amazing ability to change and heal itself in response to mental experience. This phenomenon, known as neuroplasticity, is considered to be one of the most important developments in modern science for our understanding of the brain. The human brain is not fixed and unchangeable, as once was thought, but can create new neural pathways to adapt to its needs. This has led to an explosion of interest in the power of brain training to improve our focus, memory, attention, and performance. For example, the brain is a self-repairing circuit, something known as trauma-induced plasticity, kicks in after injury. This can lead to a variety of interesting changes, including some that seem to unlock unused potential in the brain, known as acquired savantism, and other than that, can result in profound cognitive dysfunction. But can the brain orchestrate a self-repairing response to compensate neural loss? The answer is yes. All the many considerations need to be taken into account to fully exploit the potential of self-repairing therapies. In a research held in University of Bocconi, the researchers state that the intrinsic neurogenic activity can replace neurons to lesion sites, as for example shown in ischemic stroke, where progenitors pro-life rate and migrate to sites of damage. This may also be true in the cause of chronic neurodegenerative diseases, in which the progressive loss of neurons accounts for a significant part of the disease burden. With the rapid technological advancement, people now designing and programming computers which are capable of performing various tasks, and almost all of them are targeted to ease our life. We have already started theoretizing possibilities for advancing artificial intelligence that will help us better understand the human mind and complete advanced tasks. We have already started to see a merge between human intelligence and computers in everyday life. In the future, we hope to not only continue emerging with the technology, but hope to extend the uses of computers in everyday life and science. Some fast-paced technological advanced inventions are showing us the things such as holograms, robots, superhuman suits, microchips, 3D printing, driverless cars, transparent screens, and so much more. As possible as of now, we use computers in the daily life for everything from the social networking to disease diagnosis and research. But how much further will we merge with technology? I guess we will just have to wait and find out. Here's my references list. Thank you for your attention.